Hello everyone. In this video tutorial, I will show you how to work with items in the Easy Survival RPG project. In order to place an item on the level, go to the Blueprints, Interaction Objects, Items folder, and drag and drop the BP item onto the level. Red arrows and messages indicate that the item is not configured. So to configure this one, need to select it and next move to the Details tab. Here need to load the item settings from the DT Items Data table. This can be done by selecting an item in the row name field. For example, let's choose the weapon sword item. We can see that the sword mesh is loaded from the table. The item can be moved and rotated. Let's stick it in the sand. We also see that in the settings we can set the amount in the stack, durability, and the remaining decay time for the item. For the item, you can set a physics simulation. By default, this setting is enabled for items. It can be disabled and gravity will not act on them. We will see this by running the simulation. Also, for an item, you can set decay over time setting in the can decay property. I'll need 2 more items to demonstrate this. Let's copy them. Now need to choose an item that can decay, such as raw meat. We see that the decay time value property has changed. Let's change it to 3 seconds. Next, let's run the simulation and see what happens. We see that the meat has turned into spoiled meat. This can be seen by selecting an item and looking at the item settings. Row name has changed. Items can be endless. This means that they will not disappear when the player tries to pick them up in the inventory. Let's copy the meat and set it infinite. Let's start the game and check it out. We can see that this meat doesn't disappear after we pick it up. Now it's time to show how to work with item settings and the item data table. Go to the Data Tables folder and open DT Items. This table contains all the information of all items in the game. The table is based on the str item instance structure. Let's open it. This structure contains all settings of the item. Let's go over it all. The first property is the item ID in the table. It must match the name of the row in the item table. Then comes the name, description, and icon of the item. These fields are used to display information about an item in the Items tooltip. Next comes the class of the item, the maximum amount of item in a stack, and the maximum durability of the item. Then comes the list of static meshes of the item. Let's go to the data table and consider an example. Let's choose weapon sword and see what meshes are used for this item. The sword uses 2 meshes with indices drop and usable. The drop index is used for all items located in the world or dropped from the inventory. Usable index is used for items used in hotbar slots. Next one is the list of skeletal meshes. Let's go to the table and consider an example. Skeletal meshes are used to replace modular character meshes. Let's find an item of equipment, for example, these pants. Open the mesh list and see the Jess index. This is the name of the game character. For example, if we have a female character, we will need to use a different mesh, which we could get, for example, by the Jessica index. You can also customize the list of sounds. Basically, the take indices are used for sounds to play the sound of picking up an item and the sounds of an object drop on different surfaces. For example, drop an item on grass, sand, stone, etc. For different items, you can also add other indices. Next ones are the item tags. Tags are used to classify an item. An item can be a component, equipment, fuel, quest item, resource, and usable item. The item can be equipped, such as body, legs, arms, head, and pants. The item can be fuel, such as coal, grass, liquid fuel, or wood. It can be a resource, that is, coins. There are many things used in this classification. For example, an item can be used for building, can be consumable after use. You can also define an animation stance for the item, as well as the type of tool or weapon. These are all stances that are used in the project. For each stance type, its own animations are used. You can add new stances and configure stance animations. And this is classification of types of tools and the classification of types of weapons. Next comes the cost of the item. Here you can set the cost of the item in resources and other ones. Then there are the attributes given by the item. Let's check the attributes that are given when equipping pants: armor, maximum carry weight, increased maximum energy, and maximum health. Let's add another attribute. For example, pants now will give a bonus to critical strike chance. This way you can add and remove attributes you need. Then there are the item decay settings. The item can decay or not, the time of decay, and the result of item decaying during the time. Just what I showed earlier, when raw meat turned into spoiled meat. Next comes the weight of one unit of the item. This value is summed up in the stack. For pants, this value is 1 kilogram. And at the end, there is the item's ability that is used when the item is used by the player. Pants don't have an ability, so let's find an item with any ability. For example, raw meat. The ability of this item restores hunger when the character eats this one. Now, it is time to show how to add a new item to the data table. To do this, you need to create a new table row by clicking on the plus sign. Next, enter the item identifier. This will be the weapon grade sword. Then you need to find and select this identifier in the table list. Next, you have to enter the name and description of the item. Select the big sword icon. Leave the item class, maximum stack, and durability as default. Next, you need to configure the list of static meshes, setting up the drop mesh. You also need to add a mesh with the usable index to display it when the item is equipped. Skeletal meshes don't need to be configured. The following one is the list of item sounds. Let's copy that from another sword. The pickup sound is now metallic. The sounds of the sword hitting different surfaces were also copied. Next, you need to configure the tags. Set the type of weapon and select the sword tag. You also need to set the stance and select the sword tag. pass the cost property. Let's set up the attributes that the sword will give when it is equipped. Add in damage. The damage will be 50. Add in the attack range. It will be 200. And let's add more damage for chopping. It will be 150. Next, you don't need to configure the decay settings for the sword. And last, you need to set the weight of the item. It will be 10, for example. Don't need to set the item ability. Go to the level viewport. Let's check out the great sword in action. Copying a common sword. Selecting the great sword from the list. And after, click Play from here. Pick up the sword. Open the inventory. Now we see the name, description, item weight, and attributes. Everything is correct. So let's check the new item. Equip this one and hit the trees. So, the job has done. This way, you can add and configure any items to your project. Good luck!